Hello and welcome to Stories of Science. Here, we look back on humanity's long journey to understand the world. The questions, the failures, and the breakthroughs that slowly changed how we see the universe and ourselves. We tell science as stories.
Mars might be Earth's future warning. 2037. You're standing on the surface of Mars. Red dust under your boots. A sky that looks strangely faded. The temperature is around -60 degrees Celsius. Every breath inside your helmet instantly turns to frost. No birds. No oceans. No trees moving in the wind. Just silence. And dust storms powerful enough to race across the planet at over 100 kilometers per hour. The kind of storms that make Earth hurricanes look almost polite. But the truly terrifying part, there's barely any atmosphere above your head. Mars has less than 1% of Earth's air pressure. So if you took your helmet off, you wouldn't simply run out of oxygen. Your body would enter a near-vacuum environment. Your blood wouldn't boil instantly like in Hollywood movies, but the fluids in your body would begin to expand dangerously. NASA actually experienced something similar during a pressure accident back in 1965. A technician later said the last thing he remembered before blacking out was feeling the saliva on his tongue start to boil. Suddenly Mars doesn't sound so romantic anymore. But here's where the story gets strange. Because scientists now believe this frozen wasteland may not have always looked like this. In 1971, NASA's Mariner 9 spacecraft entered Martian orbit, and what it photographed stunned researchers. Dry river channels, massive canyons, landscapes that looked carved by catastrophic floods. Then in 2004, the Opportunity rover discovered tiny hematite spheres, minerals that on Earth usually form in long-term liquid water environments. And in 2012, Curiosity landed inside Gale Crater and found something even more convincing: ancient streambeds. Rounded pebbles smoothed by flowing water over enormous stretches of time, not days, not years, possibly millions of years. Then came another shock. On September 28, 2015, NASA announced evidence of seasonal liquid saltwater activity on Mars. Which means this deadly, frozen, radiation-soaked planet may once have had rivers, lakes, maybe even oceans. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What happened to Mars? How does a world that may once have supported life end up looking like the aftermath of the apocalypse? Because early Mars was surprisingly Earth-like. It had water, volcanoes. A thicker atmosphere. Even its day is almost identical to ours: 24 hours and 39 minutes. Honestly, that's less difference than most people's weekend sleep schedule. And now more scientists are starting to wonder if Mars is more than just another planet. Maybe it's a warning, a glimpse of what happens when a world slowly dies. Because Mars might not just be a dead planet, it might be a preview. Humanity became obsessed with Mars long before airplanes ever existed. Long before rockets, long before satellites, people were already staring at that strange red dot in the night sky, wondering what it was. Because Mars stood out. Most stars looked white or yellow, but Mars looked blood red, like someone turned the saturation all the way up. The ancient Romans saw that color and immediately thought, yeah, that can't be good. So they named it after Mars, the god of war. And ancient China had a similar reaction. They called it Yingwo, loosely meaning something like the glowing omen. Old Chinese records even warned that when Mars appeared in certain parts of the sky, chaos and war might follow. Imagine being an emperor 2,000 years ago. You look up, see a glowing red planet, and instantly assume the universe is sending you a threat notification. Funny thing is, civilizations all over the world came to similar conclusions. That planet looked angry. But the more humans studied Mars, the stranger it became. Because Mars didn't just look like a light in the sky. It looked like a world. It had mountains, canyons, deserts, polar ice caps, even seasons. Mars tilts on its axis almost like Earth does, so it experiences spring, summer, fall, and winter too. And a Martian day lasts just 24 hours and 37 minutes. Honestly, if humans ever move there, the biggest adjustment might not be survival. It might be complaining about an extra 37 minutes of work every day. But a Martian year is much longer, 687 Earth days. So winter on Mars lasts long enough to make anyone question their life choices. And because Mars seemed so Earth-like, people in the 1800s started imagining something wild. What if Mars had civilization? Then came a translation mistake that changed everything. In 1877, Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli observed strange lines on Mars. He called them canali. He meant channels or grooves, but English newspapers translated it as canals. Artificial canals. And suddenly the world lost its mind. Because canals meant engineers meant intelligent life. People genuinely started believing Mars was home to an advanced civilization. American astronomer Percival Lowell became completely fascinated. In 1894, he even built an observatory to study Mars full-time. The more he looked, the more convinced he became that Martians were building giant irrigation systems to save their dying planet. Looking back, it sounds completely ridiculous. But at the time, people believed it. Humanity hadn't even invented airplanes yet, and somehow we were already worrying about Martian water management. As the saying goes, truth is stranger than fiction. Then Mars invaded science fiction itself. In 1898, H.G. Wells published The War of the Worlds, a story about Martians attacking Earth with massive machines. And in 1938, Orson Welles adapted it into a radio broadcast designed to sound like live news coverage. People panicked. Some called the police, some packed their bags, some thought the world was ending. The Martians hadn't even arrived yet, and Earth was already terrified. But the real Mars turned out to be even stranger than the stories. Mars is only about half Earth's size, its gravity is incredibly weak. If you weigh 154 pounds on Earth, you'd feel closer to 58 on Mars. Sounds great, until your muscles start disappearing. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station have already shown that low gravity causes serious muscle loss and weakens bones over time. Future Martian settlers might need daily workouts just to stay functional. Otherwise, tying your shoes could eventually feel like an Olympic event. And then there's the atmosphere. About 95% carbon dioxide, almost no oxygen, and unbelievably thin. The air pressure on Mars is far lower than the top of Mount Everest. Taking your helmet off there wouldn't mean trouble breathing. It would mean game over. But Mars still has one last surprise: the sky. During the day, it looks reddish-orange because the air is filled with microscopic iron-rich dust, basically rust floating everywhere. Mars is, in many ways, a planet-sized rusted desert. But sunsets on Mars are completely backwards. In 2005, NASA's Spirit and Opportunity rovers captured images that stunned scientists. On Earth, we get blue skies and red sunsets. On Mars, the daytime sky is reddish, but sunsets glow blue around the sun. Sometimes the universe really likes doing things the opposite way around. If you ever stood on Mars in person, you'd realize something immediately. This is not Earth 2.0. It's more like the universe designed the ultimate survival nightmare and painted it red. The average temperature on Mars is around -63 degrees Celsius. And remember, that's the average. At night, many regions drop below -90. Near the poles during winter, temperatures can crash to -125. At that point, even Antarctica would probably say, okay, that's a bit excessive. And the air, barely there. Mars has less than 1% of Earth's atmospheric pressure. So if you removed your helmet, you wouldn't just struggle to breathe, your entire body would start reacting to the low pressure. Water can't remain stable, gases in your bloodstream begin expanding. In other words, Mars doesn't need monsters. The planet itself is the monster. And then come the dust storms. Not city-sized storms, not continent-sized, planet-sized. Entire global storms can swallow Mars for months at a time. The sky darkens, sunlight fades, the whole world starts looking like the end credits of civilization. Wind speeds can exceed 60 miles per hour. Now, because the atmosphere is thin, the wind doesn't hit like a hurricane on Earth. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is the dust. Mars is covered in ultrafine iron-rich particles, basically microscopic rust. That dust gets everywhere, into machinery, into joints, onto solar panels. Over time, it slowly grinds equipment down like sandpaper. And Mars also has gigantic dust devils. Towering red tornadoes over 6 miles high, about the same altitude commercial airplanes fly on Earth. From a distance, they don't even look real. They look biblical. But the thing scientists fear most isn't the cold or the storms. It's radiation. Earth is protected by a powerful magnetic field, an invisible shield that blocks much of the solar wind and cosmic radiation. Mars barely has one anymore. So radiation slams directly into the surface. Long-term exposure could massively increase cancer risks and damage the human body in ways we still don't fully understand. Future Martian colonies might have to live underground like moles just to survive. And somehow, in the middle of this nightmare world, Mars also contains some of the most ridiculous landscapes in the solar system. Take Olympus Mons, the largest volcano we know of, about 22 kilometers tall. Mount Everest is only about 8.8. Olympus Mons is so huge that if you stood at its base, you might not even see the summit because of the curvature of Mars itself. That's not a mountain anymore. That's a continent pretending to be a volcano. And then there's Valles Marineris, a canyon system roughly 4,000 kilometers long and up to 7 kilometers deep. Some sections are so wide they make the Grand Canyon look tiny. Standing near the edge would probably make you wonder if the planet itself had cracked open. Mars is also covered in craters. Its atmosphere is too thin to burn up many incoming meteors, so for billions of years the planet has basically been a cosmic punching bag. Some impact craters stretch hundreds of kilometers across, scars left behind by the solar system itself. And at the poles, Mars hides enormous ice caps made not only of water ice, but frozen carbon dioxide. During winter, parts of the atmosphere literally freeze onto the surface, then in spring, they evaporate back into the air again. Like the planet is slowly breathing. That's what makes Mars so unsettling. It's freezing, dead, hostile, and yet somehow breathtaking at the same time. Like the universe mixed beauty and extinction together, and called it Mars. Today, Mars looks like a dead world. A frozen desert, dust storms, thin air, endless silence. But the more scientists study it, the stranger the story becomes. Because billions of years ago, Mars may have looked completely different. Not just less hostile. Possibly wet, warm, maybe even more Earth-like than some places on Earth today. The first clues appeared in the 1970s when spacecraft started sending back detailed images of the Martian surface. Scientists noticed long, winding channels stretching for hundreds of miles. They didn't look random, they looked carved by water. Then researchers found something even more convincing: ancient deltas. Just like on Earth, deltas form when rivers flow into lakes or oceans, slow down, and leave behind layers of sediment. And Mars had structures that looked exactly like that. One of the most famous examples is Jezero Crater, the place where NASA's Perseverance rover landed. From above, the area looks like the remains of an ancient river pouring into a lake billions of years ago. And that changes everything. Because stable lakes mean stable liquid water, and stable water means chemistry has time to do interesting things. As the saying goes, where there's water, there's life. That's why scientists got excited. Because Mars suddenly stopped looking like just a dead planet. It started looking like a planet that may once have been habitable. Then more evidence piled up. Rounded pebbles shaped by flowing streams, layered sedimentary rocks, and minerals like clays and sulfates that usually form only after long exposure to liquid water. Some Martian valleys are enormous, or too large to be explained by ice alone, which led scientists to a wild possibility. Ancient Mars may have had rain, not snow or rain, real clouds, real rivers, maybe even an entire water cycle. In other words, early Mars may not have been the red planet at all. It might once have been blue. Some scientists even believe the northern half of Mars was once covered by a massive ocean, an ocean possibly as large as Earth's Atlantic. And while the debate isn't fully settled, evidence for ancient water keeps getting stronger. What's even stranger is that some of that water never completely disappeared. Mars still has huge polar ice caps underground. There may be enormous amounts of frozen water hidden beneath the surface. If all that ice melted, scientists estimate it could cover the planet in a global ocean dozens of meters deep. And that leads to the truly unsettling question. If Mars once had oceans, what else did it have? A thicker atmosphere, warmer temperatures, clouds, rainstorms, maybe conditions suitable for life? And if life began in Earth's oceans, why couldn't it happen there too? But somewhere along the way, Mars started dying. And the reason may simply be this: Mars was too small. Smaller planets lose heat faster. Earth still has a hot, active core generating a powerful magnetic field and invisible shield that protects our atmosphere from the solar wind. Mars lost that protection billions of years ago. Its core cooled, its magnetic field weakened, and once that shield disappeared, the sun started stripping the atmosphere away particle by particle, like the planet was slowly leaking into space. Over millions of years, the atmosphere became thinner, temperatures dropped, the greenhouse effect weakened. Water began evaporating or freezing or escaping into space. Rivers vanished, lakes dried up, the planet slowly transformed from a living world into a frozen wasteland. And that may be the most disturbing part of all. Mars didn't die overnight. It faded, step by step, layer by layer. Which is why scientists study Mars so intensely today. Not just to search for aliens, but to understand how a planet that may once have supported life lost everything. Because Mars teaches us something uncomfortable. Planetary environments are not permanent. Even a world filled with oceans and skies can slowly become silent. So far, humanity has never found confirmed life on Mars. No little green aliens. No underground Martian cities. No space octopuses hiding in caves. And NASA scientists are still extremely careful with their wording. Because in science, there's a massive difference between possible evidence and actual discovery. But here's the problem: Mars keeps getting more suspicious. Over the years, the clues have started piling up. For starters, scientists have already found organic molecules on Mars. Now, organic does not mean alive. The second people hear that word, their brains start playing sci-fi movie music. But organic molecules are simply carbon-based compounds. They exist throughout the universe, even meteorites can carry them. Still, they matter, because life on Earth is built on carbon chemistry too. In 2018, NASA announced that complex organic molecules had been found inside ancient Martian rocks over 3 billion years old. And those rocks formed in old lake environments. Which means ancient Mars may not only have had water, it may have had stable environments where chemistry could slowly evolve over long periods of time. Then things got weirder. Scientists also detected methane on Mars. And methane is interesting because, here on Earth, a lot of it comes from living organisms. Swamps produce it, microbes produce it, cows produce an absurd amount of it. Yes, cows are basically biological methane factories. The strange thing about Mars is that its methane levels seem to rise, and then mysteriously disappear. Scientists first spotted hints of Martian methane in 2003. Then between 2013 and 2014, instruments detected sudden methane spikes again. That got people very excited. Because methane doesn't survive long in the Martian atmosphere, sunlight breaks it apart fairly quickly. So if methane still exists there today, something may still be producing it. And there are only two major possibilities: geology or biology. Either underground chemical reactions are generating it, or microbes are. And suddenly the question becomes very uncomfortable. Could something still be alive beneath the surface of Mars? Because the surface today is brutal, of freezing temperatures, deadly radiation, almost no liquid water. But underground is different. Below the surface, radiation drops dramatically, and deep underground, salty liquid water may still exist. And Earth has already taught us one important lesson: life is stubborn. Scientists have discovered microbes living under Antarctic ice, near deep-sea volcanic vents, miles beneath Earth's crust, even around radioactive environments. As the saying goes, life finds a way. In 2006, researchers even revived microorganisms trapped in Siberian permafrost for hundreds of thousands of years. So some scientists now wonder if Martian life, if it ever existed, simply retreated underground and never fully disappeared, quietly hiding there for billions of years. And if we ever discover even microscopic life on Mars, the consequences would be enormous. Because it would mean life may not be rare at all. It might simply appear wherever conditions are right. And that would completely change humanity's understanding of the universe. Which is why humans have spent decades trying to reach Mars. And honestly, the early missions were brutal. Especially for the Soviet Union. Throughout the 1960s, Mission after mission failed: explosions, communication loss, malfunctions. At one point, Mars exploration had a failure rate so bad it almost felt personal. Part of the problem is timing. Earth and Mars only line up properly for launches about every 26 months. Miss the window, you wait over 2 years. And even if you launch successfully, your spacecraft still has to survive a journey of hundreds of millions of kilometers through space. One tiny mistake can end the entire mission. Then finally, on July 20, 1976, NASA's Viking 1 successfully landed on Mars. For the first time, humans could truly study the Martian surface up close. Viking even carried experiments designed to search for life directly. And decades later, scientists still argue about some of the results. Then came two legendary robots, Spirit and Opportunity. NASA expected them to survive about 90 days. Spirit lasted until 2010. Opportunity kept going until 2018. 14 years. At that point, it stopped being a rover and basically became an employee of the month for all eternity. And those rovers changed everything. They confirmed that ancient Mars once had long-lasting liquid water. Then came Curiosity in 2012, basically a rolling chemistry lab the size of a small car. It studied Martian rocks, soil, and atmosphere in incredible detail. And its conclusion was stunning. Ancient Mars may actually have been habitable. Then in 2021, Perseverance landed inside Jezero crater, an ancient lake and river delta. Its mission is simple: search for signs of ancient life. It's even collecting rock samples that future missions may eventually bring back to Earth. Humanity is literally preparing interplanetary return mail. Scientists also started studying the inside of Mars itself. Because if we want to understand how Mars died, we need to understand what happened beneath its surface. And surprisingly, Mars is still geologically active in some ways. The planet experiences Marsquakes. Not because of moving tectonic plates like Earth, but likely from underground cooling, cracking rock, and meteor impacts. Which means Mars may be far from alive. But it's not completely silent yet. People think the hardest part of reaching Mars is building the rocket. Honestly, the rocket is just the beginning. The real challenge is keeping humans alive long enough to get there. Mars sits, on average, about 225 million kilometers from Earth. At its closest, around 55 million. At its farthest, over 400 million. And both planets are constantly racing around the Sun, so flying to Mars isn't like driving straight down a highway. It's more like throwing a dart at a moving target, while you're also moving at insane speed. No wonder early Mars missions failed so often. Back in the 1960s, scientists learned the hard way that space doesn't forgive mistakes. One tiny malfunction, and the mission was dead in the water. Even today, with modern technology, a one-way trip to Mars would likely take 6 to 9 months. Half a year trapped inside a metal box. No fresh air. No takeout food. No quick walk outside. Just machines, your crewmates, and the endless black of space. As the saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt. After enough months in deep space, even hearing your teammate chew snacks might start to feel like psychological warfare. And then there's radiation. Earth has a magnetic field protecting us from much of the sun's radiation. Space doesn't. Astronauts traveling to Mars would spend months exposed to cosmic rays and solar storms. NASA estimates that a full Mars mission could push astronauts close to their lifetime radiation safety limits. So going to Mars isn't just an engineering challenge. It's a stress test for the human body itself. And once you finally arrive, congratulations, the survival problems get worse. Mars gravity is only 38% of Earth's. Sounds fun at first. You jump higher, move lighter, maybe even feel like a superhero. But low gravity slowly wrecks the body. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station already lose muscle and bone density after long missions. Some need rehabilitation just to walk normally again back on Earth. So future Mars settlers might end up tall, thin, and fragile like people straight out of a sci-fi movie. And Mars has another nasty surprise: dust. Not normal dust. Martian dust is incredibly fine, packed with iron oxide, basically electrostatic rust powder covering an entire planet. During the Apollo missions, moon dust already caused major problems for astronauts and equipment. Mars dust may be even worse. It sticks to everything and damages machinery, gets into seals and electronics, and scientists still aren't fully sure what breathing it long-term would do to humans. Future astronauts might come home from work looking less like explorers and more like someone who lost a fight with a vacuum cleaner. But the hardest part may not be radiation or dust. It may be loneliness. Communication between Earth and Mars can take anywhere from 4 to 24 minutes one way. That means no real-time conversations, no instant replies, no FaceTime calls home. If you fall on Mars and message Earth, "Are you okay?" reply could arrive after you've already dusted yourself off and eaten dinner. For the first time in human history, people would truly feel separated from Earth. Just a tiny blue dot hanging in the sky. That kind of isolation weighs heavily on the mind. Since 2015, NASA and other organizations have run long-term Mars habitat simulations on Earth. Again and again, crews reported tension, stress, and conflict from confinement alone. Turns out, lock a few humans in a small base for years, and even the last cookie can become an interplanetary diplomatic incident. And yet, humanity still wants to go. Because Mars has become the great prize of the space age. In 2001, Elon Musk publicly talked about turning humans into a multi-planet species. Later, SpaceX began developing Starship with Mars colonization in mind. Meanwhile, NASA continues to treat human Mars missions as one of its ultimate goals. Countries around the world are now studying Mars farming, underground habitats, oxygen production, even how to make fuel on another planet. Because deep down, everyone knows something. If humanity ever expands into the solar system, Mars will probably be the first stop. But the more scientists study Mars, the stranger the planet becomes. Today it's cold, silent, and lifeless. Red dust storms sweep across ancient craters that have sat untouched for billions of years. The sky is dim. The air is thin. The whole planet feels frozen in time. But evidence suggests it wasn't always this way. Mars may once have had rivers, oceans, rain, clouds, maybe even environments where life could survive. And that's the part that keeps scientists awake at night. Mars isn't terrifying because it looks like hell today. Mars is terrifying because it may once have looked a little like paradise. Then, slowly, it lost its magnetic field, lost its atmosphere, lost its oceans, and eventually became the dead world we see now. In a way, Mars is like a planetary crime scene, a record of how a living world can slowly fall silent. And maybe the most unsettling question isn't whether Mars ever had aliens. Maybe it's this: if a planet with skies and oceans could die, could Earth someday face the same fate too?
The people who change the world usually just think one step deeper. If this story made you see things differently, hit like, subscribe, and save it. See you in the next story.